Nice to see you again. In this clip, we will focus on some of the ethical challenges within story-based research. Things like essentialism, exoticizing islands, and claiming representation of people and/or issues in our research. For example, assuming that islands are small by focusing on their land mass does not help us understand the many complexities of island identity and life. Instead, it creates an exotic picture, that is, an outsider's perspective defined through the outsider's biases. Together, we will discuss ways in which we can avoid simplistic and exotic accounts of unfamiliar places, people, and practices. Some of the techniques we can use to overcome our biases aim to learn to understand the places where we do research in their own terms, by listening, learning, joining the flow of everyday life, and adapting our research methods to this flow. We are going to discuss this in more detail in this video installment. As we have discussed before, respecting the relationship between meaning and practice is paramount for coherent and ethical research. Let me tell you two stories that can help us understand this. At the beginning of my fieldwork, I kept asking the wrong questions. For example, how does climate change impact on the lives of islanders? Along the way, I learned that the island was much more than its land and intrinsically connected across the seas and the region. Or another example, many islanders mention that the mountain on the island is shrinking. I immediately thought that this statement referred to sea level rise. Months later, I realized that there was another meaning to this story. Back in 1998, as a very young geologist, I traveled to Yogyakarta in West Indonesia to study the Merapi volcano. During my time there, I met many dukun, meaning healers in Bahasa Indonesia, who worked with and around the volcano. One of them told me once that our geological knowledge was producing a kind of white noise, which turned all the other native and local knowledge unintelligible. They couldn't hear the volcano anymore. That thought of academic knowledge blocking other knowledge never truly left my mind. And so, in 2013, while living on Leiden Island in eastern Indonesia, I decided to ask different questions. What does it mean that the mountain is shrinking? Instead of assuming that this statement meant that the sea is rising. I asked and asked around. Everyone mentioned how many elders could turn the island invisible, and they had done so during colonization. But they also mentioned that now, the attention that the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami had brought to Leiden Island was also turning parts of the island invisible. This must be about knowledge too, I thought. Research knowledge can miss out on essential details about the places in which we do research. For example, by assuming that islands end where the sea begins, can lead researchers to design questions which are completely disconnected from local experiences. This is precisely why it is important to always be aware of our place producing Western-centric research narratives that might not be representative of the places we work in and with. Now we turn to the second story. Leiden Island does struggle with flooding and landslides every year as the season of storms settles in. The Erok, a hybrid wave made of both wind and water, visits the island to remind islanders that collectivism is an important part of everyday life. If islanders are not attuned to each other and do not practice the ways of the island, crisis will ensue. With new environmental knowledge arriving to the island via Manado, Jakarta, and internationally, the ways of the island have opened up a space where the island, with all it entails, can be deemed visible or invisible in different ways. The ways of the island are so intrinsically collective that to speak of Bajo ways in English and in academia in a unified manner and in ways people here can understand would require adopting simplified notions of the island, the islander, the self, etc. This also applies to media coverage of Bajo peoples, a wide range of maritime island peoples across Southeast Asian seas and beyond. For example, do you know that many Bajo identify as islanders, but not as sea nomads? Do you know that many Bajo don't know how to swim, but can sail boats since childhood? Do you know that the name Bajo is an exonym? That means a name given by an external actor. As you can see, these examples show that academic knowledge is sometimes not only insufficient, but it can even hamper, obstruct, and negatively impact the research itself. This can be avoided by taking an anti-colonial research approach. In anti-colonial research approaches, the researcher continuously questions everything, from research design to methods and to outcomes. Such an approach to research requires that our methods are conversational, renegotiated during research, and adapted to the needs, ideas, and knowledge of the places in which we research. Interviews usually happen as part of the flux of everyday activities and in conversational format. Observations are also casual, designed following people's pace and journeys through the island, for example. Methods might be decided before arriving to the island, but their type, structured, semi-structured, open, and their application will undergo constant reflexivity in collaboration with those around us. In a nutshell, anti-colonial methods are conventional methods which follow decolonial principles and are based on reflexivity and positionality of the researcher and the knowledge she produces. But remember, storytelling as a method is not anti-colonial until the researcher has interrogated their own biases and has situated their knowledge within the right frameworks. An anti-colonial method always asks itself, what power dynamics are sustained and/or reproduced through the way that I do things and through the information that I collect? Thus, in reflective and critical research, many of us ascribed to anti-colonial ethics. We don't speak about or for people. We contribute to providing the space where epistemic diversity can be realized coherently. In this installment, we have covered quite a lot. We have departed from common biases about islands and islanders in Indonesia and have discussed ways in which we can transform our research methods into more ethical tools. We have also reflected about the challenges of these processes of reflexivity and anti-colonial knowledge co-production. Join me again for our last video, in which we will finally put things on paper. See you then.